Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Wynna Wong. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. New COVID cases in Hong Kong stay in 3 digits for almost 3 weeks, prompting experts to call for an end to curbs. Beijing steps up measures to stop COVID from spreading. And a leaked U.S. Supreme Court report on abortion rights triggers nationwide rallies. New COVID infections in Hong Kong have remained below 500 for the 10th day in a row. The 313 infections recorded today included 12 students and 5 school employees. 4 of them had been to school yesterday. There were also 22 imported cases. COVID-related deaths fell to 3, the lowest since mid-February. One was a 59-year-old man with chronic illnesses and had kidney surgery. He tested positive late last month and was taken to Penny's Bay. Staff found him unconscious on Monday afternoon and rushed him to hospital, but he died despite resuscitation efforts. With Hong Kong's daily COVID caseload tapering off, health experts have called for the lifting of all restrictions. They ruled out a health threat when some curbs end tomorrow. Johanna Chan reports.
Daily COVID cases have been declining after topping 58,000 in early March. Speaking on a radio program, government advisor David Hui said the pandemic will slowly become an endemic as infections decrease. He noted there hasn't been a huge rebound since some measures were lifted last month, adding that the vaccination rate is high. More COVID rules will be relaxed tomorrow, including the reopening of beaches. 8 customers can be seated at each table in restaurants, and people exercising outdoors need not wear masks. Hui believes the measures will not pose great risks, as restaurants have installed better air ventilation systems and are checking vaccine passes. Catering Services Management Association Chairman Leung Chun-Hwa said had the seating limits not been raised, business on Mother's Day on Sunday would be just half of pre-pandemic levels. He now expects business for eateries to reach 80%. Infectious disease expert Ho Pak Leung said it is quite feasible for Hong Kong to reopen its international borders, but resuming quarantine-free travel to the mainland remains uncertain. He noted that 180 countries have started to cancel social distancing measures. He said Hong Kong needs to hurry to catch up, adding that current relaxations will most likely not have huge risks. Johanna Chan, HKIBC.
Beijing has cut subway services and closed shops in a bid to snuff out a brewing COVID outbreak. There are also fears that Henan province may become the latest hotspot. Streets in the capital were eerily quiet today as authorities stepped up measures to keep COVID at bay. More than 40 subway stations were closed in the morning, and another 20 were added to the list this afternoon. In the hardest-hit district of Chaoyang, over 100 bus routes were either diverted or halted altogether. But health officials have shortened the quarantine time for close contacts and people entering the city, citing the Omicron variant's shorter incubation period. Instead of 2 weeks, it is now 10 days, followed by 7 days of home isolation. Beijing recorded 51 local cases yesterday, 10 fewer than on Monday. Beleaguered Shanghai reported an additional 5,000 infections and 16 deaths. Those who died were aged between 64 and 99. All were unvaccinated and had underlying diseases. With nearly 200 cases in the past 3 days discovered in the community instead of in isolation, it seems there is still some way to go before the dynamic zero goal can be achieved. Meanwhile, there are fears that Zhengzhou in the central province of Henan may become the next hotspot after 14 positive cases were found there. Residents in the central part of the city have been asked to avoid going out, while classes have been suspended. Locally, the city's sole chief executive candidate has reiterated that Hong Kong has press freedom, but said some have abused it.
There have been people who try to give the impression that they are doing media work, when in fact they are pursuing political and personal purposes. There are also attempts overseas by governments for their political purposes to badmouth Hong Kong.
Comments followed a visit to the West Kowloon Cultural District, where he met 80 people marking National Youth Day. They discussed the youth's hopes and dreams, with Lee saying talks may continue in his future administration. The number of corruption complaints rose last year, with the ICAC saying the lull in 2020 could be because COVID disrupted economic activity. The watchdog also expressed concern about the insurance sector, where complaints almost doubled. Joanna Ho reports.
Despite an increase in the number of corruption complaints last year, the ICAC said Hong Kong is still recognized as a clean society. Complaints rose to 2,264, up 18% from 2020. The head of the Independent Commission Against Corruption, Simon Pear, said that could be because the COVID pandemic in 2020 forced many companies to cut economic activities, resulting in fewer complaints that year. The number of complaints last year was comparable with the figure in 2019. There was a surge in complaints about the insurance sector, which recorded an 83% jump from 24 to 44 last year. Pear said the Commission hasn't investigated the reason, but believed there may be some loopholes in the system.
We are not quite sure about why the number of corruption complaints concerning the insurance industry increased last year. But we will try very hard, not only on law enforcement, but also we have to strengthen our education work, our publicity work. And also we have a look into the procedures of public individual insurance company or as industry as a whole.
On a separate note, Pear said 7 people suspected of inciting others to cast blank ballots in last year's Legislative Council election and have gone overseas are now listed as wanted persons by the ICAC and can be extradited back to Hong Kong. He added the Commission will send 80 staff to monitor the voting and counting stations during the Chief Executive election on Sunday. Joanna Ho, HKIBC.
Overseas, a leaked Supreme Court draft decision to overrule a landmark case which guaranteed abortion rights has ignited a political firestorm across the United States. Pro- and anti-abortion groups demonstrated in major cities as lawmakers locked horns just months before key congressional elections. Sarah Wong reports.
Hundreds of protesters swarmed the U.S. Supreme Court following reports that a landmark ruling protecting abortion rights may be overturned. These slogan-chanting crowds are expected to get bigger as an outpouring of anger reverberated across the country over one of the most contentious issues in American politics. Others found solace in the report. This 22-year-old anti-abortion activist took his approval to new heights by scaling California's tallest skyscraper. Mason Deschamps, a rock climber known as the pro-life Spider-Man, was taken into custody after completing the stunt at the Salesforce Tower in San Francisco. The political earthquake was caused by a leaked draft ruling to overrule the 1973 decision in the case of Roe v. Wade that legalized abortion nationwide. Chief Justice John Roberts confirmed the authenticity of the document, but said it by no means was the final say. President Joe Biden called it a radical decision and mobilized voters to voice their opposition in the midterm elections in November, when his Republican rivals aim to regain congressional control. Lawmakers crossed swords in the Senate, where Democrats launched a bid to codify Roe v. Wade into law.
Every American is going to see on which side every senator stands.
Republicans, meanwhile, assailed the person who leaked the report.
This lawless action should be investigated and punished. to the fullest extent possible.
The draft opinion was initially backed by at least 5 of the 9 members of the highest U.S. court, including 3 conservative justices handpicked by former President Donald Trump. But a final decision is not expected until next month or early July, and the justices are free to change their minds. Sarah Wong, HKIBC.
More people have been evacuated after being trapped for weeks in a steel plant in the Ukrainian city of Mariupol. One group of around 130 women, children, and elderly people reached the Ukrainian-controlled city of Zaporizhia after their ordeal. It was a small victory for diplomacy, as the United Nations and the Red Cross asked Russian forces to hold fire while the civilians left. But around 30 people who left the plant chose to stay in Mariupol, along with around 100,000 others stranded in the besieged city. North Korea has fired a ballistic missile in its latest show of force. South Korea and Japan said the rocket was launched from Sunan on the outskirts of Pyongyang. The missile reportedly flew for about 500 kilometers before falling outside Japan's exclusive economic zone. It was the North's 13th missile test this year and came just days before hardliner Yoon Suk-yeol is sworn in as South Korea's new president. HSBC has launched its $1 billion share buyback. As many as 2 million shares could be canceled in a move that should boost the bank's average earnings per share. The process that ends in August will enable the lender to redeploy excess capital. But a plan for another buyback this year has been shelved after first quarter profits fell sharply. A look at the markets now. The Hang Seng Index was down 232 points. Top 10 active stocks. Tencent was down $11.60. Meituan down $7.90. JD was down $10.20. AIA down $1. To foreign exchange rates, it was 8.26 to the euro and 9.82 to the British pound. In UK markets, the UK FTSE is down 25 points. The European Union has unveiled a plan to ban Russian oil imports as the bloc doubled down on efforts to deplete Russia's war chest. Brussels proposed a phased embargo on Russian crude oil in the next 6 months and stopping refined oil by the end of the year. These are the toughest EU measures despite surging energy prices in Europe. They were announced after Germany, which imports 12% of its oil from Russia, supported the ban. A look at the weather before we go. It will be mainly fine tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 23 and 29 degrees. Sunny intervals in the coming days. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. And that's our main news for Wednesday night. Join us for more at 11. I'm Wynna Wong. Good night.